Okay, Steve, Dr. Kern, would you please come up and make your announcement real quickly?
Just a quick reminder that tomorrow night is when the debate that I'll be having with the Americans United for Separation of Church and State debate on intelligent design. It will be at the Oklahoma City Community College at 7 o'clock in the Baptist Student Union building on the north side. So I hope you'll be there tomorrow. Get there a little bit early. There'll probably be a pretty good crowd there, but need all the support I can get.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kern. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move right along with our meeting. And to set this up, I want to thank again everyone. How many of you actually went to the Capitol a week ago last Thursday? Could I see a show of hands? How many of you did? Okay, we got a few did. There were probably about 30, maybe a little bit more than 30 that actually showed up. And Bob prepared a handout and kind of did it a particular way. We had a cover sheet with a few bullet points on it. Then underneath that cover sheet was actually the 3-paragraph press release from Governor Walker when he announced that the state of Wisconsin would not participate in these federal healthcare insurance exchanges, and also announced that he would be issue an executive order to disband their actual committee that was commissioned with the task of coming up with this healthcare exchange. So that was page 2, and then we had copies of the bills under that. Very brief, because lawmakers are very, very busy at this time of the year, and we didn't want to overburden them with too much to read. If they wanted more, they could read more depth there. I took 3 senators to talk to and ended up talking with about 5. Senator Stanislawski here was actually in the chair that day, so couldn't pull him off the floor. But I know his EA, Shannon, where are you, Shannon Sharpton? You're out here somewhere. Would you please stand here? This is Shannon Sharpton. This is his EA. Shannon is the wife of Mark Sharpton, who is County Commissioner District 1 in Logan County, and a very, as I've said on various occasions, I think the best county commissioner in the state of Oklahoma. And I know you like hearing that, but anyway, as soon as Gary got out of session, sent word that he'd like to visit with me and me alone, and so I went to his office and spent about an hour, close to an hour. It was a lengthy discussion. And I really appreciated it because it was actually a discussion. I wasn't there to actually lecture Senator Stanislawski. He wasn't there to lecture me. We discussed things, and we brought a lot of things up. And I want to assure you of one thing, that there are certain parts of this bill that are, and Amanda, you can probably help me with understanding, interoperable with some of the things required by the federal government through Obamacare. And there are certain things in this legislation that are not compliant with what the feds want. And so Gary is catching heck from the coastal world for a bill that's not completely compliant, and he's catching heck from us because we don't want anything. And so he finds himself in the middle. What a popular place to be here. But we did discuss many, many things, and I felt it was important because we've had Amanda here twice during her presentation. It's a very fine presentation. It's full of some very important information, and I'd like for more and more people to see it and to understand it. But I also think it's important that Gary come today and share some of his perspectives on what he was trying to do. I noticed an email last night from David Hackett, and it had included an exchange between he and Senator Ralph Shorty. And Ralph Shorty, have you seen it? I've seen it. Okay. And Senator Shorty took issue with our friend David Hackett over the concept that somehow Gary wants Obamacare. I can assure you, after my 1-hour discussion with Gary, he's not the least interested in having Obamacare here. And as happens so frequently among conservatives, we have an end objective, but sometimes our strategies on how to get there are different. And sometimes if we're not careful, those strategies will actually create a division and strife between us. And so I think it's just really important again. So please welcome State Senator Gary Stanislawski from Tulsa. About no more than 15 minutes to explain what you want to, and then we'll try to do 10 minutes Q&A before we get to our main speaker. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for having me here today. When I visited with Charlie, he felt like, and I certainly agreed with him, that it would be good for me to share my heart with you all of where we were coming from. And although we may disagree on strategies, at least we can agree to disagree and have a fuller understanding of what the thought process was behind it. That's all the attempt is here today, not to convince anyone of anything, but just help people to understand where were we coming from. So, as many of you know, I've been here several times before. This last year, when a certain bill was trying to go through, and then I came here and said we had negotiated that it's not going to go any farther. 2 weeks later, there was going to be some special committee held that was going to continue the work. I came and I alerted everyone, and we got the word out, and that stopped. My commitment to both the governor's office and the Senate staff and House staff was that we would have a legislative committee over the interim. We met 5 times. It was more important to me that we not just focus on exchange versus non-exchange, but let's deal with the broader issue, and that is health care. In our state, we all know health care, we rank toward the bottom in health care. In fact, we rank toward the bottom in many things. Thankfully, that's why Republicans have taken control. We can finally change course of our state. But we rank near the bottom. And the primary reason we rank near the bottom, number one reason, in my opinion, is we as individuals choose to blame others for our own problems. And over 70% of the time, the statistic came out, people have hospitalizations not due to some outside illness that they're contracting, but something from within because of obesity, because of a lack of proper diet and nutrition, because of a lack of exercise. That's not a popular thing to say, but it's the truth. Okay? And people need to accept personal responsibility for their own health care. All right? So that was part of the final report that came out. One of the things I wanted to make sure happened during these meetings was they were going to be open, they were going to be transparent. In fact, I asked Shannon to create a website, and she did. Has anyone been to the website? Please write this down. She did a great job creating it. It's okhealthcare.info. What a creative name, huh? okhealthcare.info. On that website, you will see every meeting that the Health Committee had. 5 meetings, 3 in Oklahoma City, 2 in Tulsa. We wanted to make sure, as much as possible, we wanted them videotaped. In some locations, we couldn't get it videotaped, but it was audio taped. And so every person said, one of which was Amanda. I personally invited her and OK Safe to also present. I believe it's extremely important that all perspectives from all elements of this bill be heard. So all of that is on there. In addition to that, the final recommendations of the committee is on there as well. All right, so let me move faster through the final recommendation. We studied we, the committee, but mainly Representative Mulready and myself, studied a number of documents. Everything from, I just brought a couple because they were small, appealing Obamacare from ALEC, to the Obamacare disaster, Peter Ferrara, to Michael Cannon, to Heritage Foundation. You name the document, we probably read through most, if not all, of that document, trying to figure out what's the best strategy for our state. And what we came up with was we wanted a two-pronged approach. Number one, we didn't feel it appropriate just to try to create something for the purpose of defending our state against Obamacare.
Yeah, yeah.
We thought that would be a waste of our time. If we're going to do something, we want something to be good public policy that will actually help the state based upon what are good Republican free market principles, that even if, or even when, I'm going to be more optimistic here, even when Obamacare goes down, shot down by the U.S. Supreme Court, hopefully in June, on the individual mandate, or we elect a new president, that it goes away. But we wanted, if we're going to waste our time, if we're going to spend time, if we're going to analyze and take time, if we're going to do something, let's do something that can stand the test of time. So therefore, what we decided to do was to take a program that was voted on by the people of Oklahoma in 2004. State Question 713, the people said, let's raise tobacco tax dollars in order to fund a program which was named Insure Oklahoma, in order to reduce the uninsured working poor in our state. And that overwhelmingly passed. It was implemented. It's been a successful program. Over 31,000 people who are working in some form or capacity are now able to obtain some type of subsidized insurance, not through our tax dollars, but through the state tobacco tax dollars. And it helped to reduce the uninsured. Okay? There are over 20 different private insurance carriers engaged in that program already. Over 20. Okay? So what we thought would be perhaps a good idea is, number one, let's spin that out of Insure Oklahoma, spin it out of the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority. Oklahoma Healthcare Authority is the state's Medicaid agency. And very often, people who start to enroll get diverted into a public welfare program rather than the private healthcare system. So we thought one thing we could do to help solve the problem is pull it out of the healthcare authority and put it somewhere else. The only other place we could come up with that would have oversight would be a public trust. There are pluses and minuses to that. We couldn't think of any other thing to do to create a board and yet have some people that are elected officials on that, so there was some type of transparency and some type of accountability to the people, but pull it out of the healthcare agency, the Medicaid agency. The second thing we would do then is expand the mission to include non-subsidized healthcare. Not subsidized by the federal government, not subsidized by the state. And the effort was to do something similar to the state of Utah. Utah had created an exchange a few years ago with a private marketplace, trying to help small business owners provide health insurance. What's interesting is they modeled theirs after us and the Insure Oklahoma success that we had with private marketplace healthcare. So we wanted to offer small businesses defined in this case as 50 employees or less, the opportunity, no mandate, that if they wanted to participate, they could. And what would they get for this? Well, a small business owner, say of 10 employees, could say, we can't afford health insurance on our own. But what we can do is, I will deposit, and they decide whatever the amount they want. $200 a month for my employees here into this program. Now, those employees, if they want to participate, no mandate, they can then take that $200 and go shopping for their health insurance on this expanded Insure Oklahoma program, marketplace. The second benefit would be, and this doesn't exist today, if a spouse and their employer chose to participate, again I'm going to say it, no mandate, they could choose to enroll, no subsidy, no information going to anyone else other than to the insurance company, and they could deposit, say, $300 a month. For the first time ever within our state that I'm aware of, they could now take that $200 plus the $300, that's $500, and for the first time ever as a family, go choose and shop among all these different insurance companies and the policies to select the best policy for their family and their family's needs. They can actually be on the same doctors, have the same network, the same hospitals. Instead of him being on one whole network and keeping up with co-pays and deductibles and her being on another whole network, they got to choose something for their own family. Now, one other addition to it was, let's say the cost of insurance was $700, not $500. $700. They could choose, no mandate, to say to their employer, I want an extra $200 coming out of my out of my paycheck, per month, to help pay for my health insurance, the one that I chose that was best for my family. And we've disconnected the employer-controlled model, where the employer chooses if they're going to have health insurance or not, if the employer chooses which company they want for all the employees, and we put the power of the free market system in the hands of the employee. No mandates, no sharing with the federal government, no federal subsidy, no state subsidy. But in order to accomplish it in the bill, and here's where it implied some confusion, we could not and did not want to do away with what the people had already voted on through State Question 713. We're not going to do away with Insure Oklahoma in its current form. In other words, for those that qualified for that state tobacco tax subsidy for the working poor, they're going to continue to get what they always got. We're not doing away with that. But our attempt was to expand it into the free market, and our belief was it could help to reduce the uninsured in small businesses. That's all we wanted to do in the small business arena. Small businesses oftentimes do not participate with small group health for two reasons. One, the cost. Right now it's what's called a defined benefit plan. You have to pay X percent or you can't get group health. We wanted to change it to defined contribution, where the employer had the freedom to choose the amount, and that's it. They can control their costs. Another reason employers don't often participate is it's too complicated. And they don't have time to mess with talking to these insurance agents all the time and changing plans. And if there's a problem, the employee comes to them. It's a mess. Why not let the employee choose and then have, if they would like to have an insurance agent contact them, on the site, it lists all the insurance agents that are qualified to help them, and one of them responds. Personalized service for that specific company. Maybe they wanted Edmond, maybe they wanted United Healthcare, maybe they have Blue Cross. There's no mandate. So I disagree with some people saying it's going to shrink the free market. Why? We didn't say there could only be 10 providers or 5 providers. Our plan, what we were trying to do, is any willing provider. We're not mandating you had to have a gold or a bronze or a silver or a platinum plan like the federal government's trying to do. Federal government's version of what we want to do is terrible. We all know it. We all agree. We don't want it. And we want to do everything that we can to keep Obamacare out of our state. The thing is, you know, I used to be in the Air Force, and I flew bombers. And we would have different mission routes laid out when I'd be on alert, nuclear alert, that if we had to go, we knew where we were going based on what we were told in the air and pulled out a certain file, and we knew our targets as soon as we got word over the radio. We were only one part of a triad. The triad was land-based bombers, bomber aircraft, land-based missiles, ICBMs, and then we also then had a third of the triad, and that was the sea. I was hoping for some Navy personnel here. Sea-based, right? It was a triad. There was no one strategy. We're going to wipe them out 3 ways. You will not mess with us. What we're hoping to do is have this strategy to be a defensive exchange. If the federal government said it's non-compliant, well, you know what? You didn't have all the rules written. I'm sorry it's non-compliant. Sue us. And hold it up in court even longer. There is another strategy, and I'm not going to disagree. It can work. It is certainly a legitimate strategy, and that is let the Supreme Court rule, let the new presidential election rule, and even then, don't do anything because we don't believe there's a capacity for the federal government to come in. And that might work. I won't deny that's a workable strategy. All I ask is don't deny that what we're doing was a workable strategy either, because that's all it was. It is not any way, shape, or form an attempt to bring in Obamacare, because for this one thing we are all in agreement. We need to keep the federal government out of the state of Oklahoma and out of our health care system.
Right.
Let's take a few questions. Bob, I'm going to let you go first.
Senator, thank you for your time. I really have 2 questions. Number one, can you give an example of where the federal government has denied funds to a state due to lack of compliance? I even went so far as to calling State Senator Dayton in Utah, one of the spearheaders behind No Child Left Behind, and how they stopped it, and yet they're still getting Department of Education funds. I mean, why is it threat? Can you answer that?
That is an excellent question. I cannot give a legitimate example. One of our speakers was Krista Drobeck with National Governors Association. She used to work for Health and Human Services. And I hope I don't misquote what I'm trying to remember. Representative Glenn Mulready from the House is here as well. And so, Glenn, check me on that if I say it wrong, even though you just took a big bite. So thank you.
Let me come on up here through the Q&A once you get that done. You can bring the food if you'd like.
I don't know of an example. She indicated that they would probably not withhold, because that was a question, a direct question asked in the committee. They would probably not withhold Medicaid funding, but withhold funding from other sources. I didn't consider that a legitimate threat. Let them withhold some money. We'll just withhold sending money to them. I mean, if they want to do that, we'll play the game. So
It just seems like a paper tiger when you get together. The other question, to keep going so others can have time, and that is the Chamber of Commerce sent out robocalls in support of this bill. Do you by chance know who specifically, as a member of the chamber, who in the chamber has got this is kind of presumptuous on my part, but you'll see where I'm coming from. Who has the interest or the financial interest to invest in robocalls to support this bill?
okay, that's good. You want it? Okay. Let me let Representative Mulready.
Glenn Mulready from Broken Arrow? Or Tulsa?
West Tulsa.
Tulsa,
West Tulsa.
okay. I know you got to keep that straight up there.
I just told Charlie he's to blame when I have to eat cold pizza here in a minute too. I can tell you there's a large group, there's a large coalition, including the chambers of commerce and most of the chambers of commerce across, not just the state chamber, but across the state, including the Hospital Association and the Association of Health Insurance Agents and Brokers and Property and Casualty Agents and the Medical Association. All those different associations were all very much in favor of the direction we're going. Again, just from the standpoint that they don't want the federal government in running a federal health insurance, adamantly opposed to a federal health insurance exchange in Oklahoma.
Yeah, but who specifically is financing the robocalls?
Oh, I have no idea.
That's a general statement to say, but when you get down into the details, that's where I want to go.
I have no way of knowing that. I'm telling you that there was an organized group of people pushing that. I'm assuming, but I really don't have any idea of that, whether they all chipped in money equally or did money separately, or there were a couple larger donors. I have no idea. But again,
Just call it usual suspects, Bob.
Yeah.
well, I disagree a little bit with that,
Okay.
only because it was not just the chambers of commerce. You had, again, the Hospital Association, the physicians groups, all the physician groups, the agent and broker communities, that sort of folks.
Okay.
Would that come from, what we're just talking about here, companies that basically feel like that they could benefit better if the government took over health care, they didn't have to provide it, it's going to save them money? And so basically a lot of businesses would say we really would like to see the health care thing simply because the government's going to pay for it rather than them.
With what was referenced there,
well, would there be
just the
somebody
opposite.
behind wanting to stop this because they would rather see the government health care come through?
Right.
Because it's going to save them money because they don't have to carry the insurance, then they just let the government provide it. And that's been part of the tactic of the whole thing anyway, is to make the businesses get out of it so everybody has to get under federal
Single
health care.
payer.
Right. Okay. There another question?
You
Was
want to
that a
answer
question?
that?
That was a question?
Well, I'm just saying, the people that he's trying to find out being behind that
Could
would be
there
the ones
be
putting the
people that
money
will
up for
profit out of
trying to
this?
stop this.
There are certainly people that, well, actually, I'm not sure if anyone, I'm sure there's someone that could profit if a federal exchange came in with what we were trying to do with any willing provider. I don't know of anyone who's necessarily going to profit. And the different groups that did robocalls, I'm sure they are aware that our bill was non-compliant. We were not mandating the Obama's different tiers of health insurance. We were not mandating certain coverages. So for that particular bill, there's no, I can't imagine a profit motive. For the federal one, I do believe there's a profit motive, because that will shrink the number of carriers, which will potentially could increase profits for a select few. So a federal exchange would. Our version of what we're attempting to do, I don't see necessarily the correlation. So,
Last question.
My name is Jeanette Lamar. I'm an AFLAC agent, and I sell indemnity insurance, so I look at a lot of health care products. I'm very sensitive to the need of the donut generation, and I have a client who's 63 who has insurance with a very prominent company in Oklahoma, who shall remain nameless, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, whose deductible is $7,500 a year, and her premiums are $430 a month, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield's policy says she will be down close to $12,500 on any illness until Blue Cross and Blue Shield will even kick in. So I'm wondering if Insure Oklahoma is for an individual in that capacity.
It's not. Insure Oklahoma is specifically driven by the federal poverty level and your income levels, your household income and number of members in your household. So nothing to do with underlying coverage that you have, or it is strictly your eligibility is based on income levels.
And also a business, right? For business employees?
Actually, there's two different programs. What they call the ESI, employer-sponsored program, which is for small businesses and for their employees that are part of the terminology of working poor, if you will, or lower income working folks. There is also an individual program that Insure Oklahoma runs, and that really is a public program. And personally, I think we blew that a handful of years ago. We were, sort of excited about bringing some assistance there to help some of the uninsured. And really, I would love to see that individual program operate just like our employer-sponsored program is. In other words, private market answers, some premium assistance for the working poor, again, if you will, but based on their income. But it should be private market solutions and not a public solution on the individual side.
Well, the fact of the matter is she's 63 years old. She's 2 years away from receiving her Social Security unless she takes it short. She works to supplement whatever little money she gets, and her employer is a national company who will not work her more than 25 hours a week for fears that she will qualify for insurance, but the premiums will be driven up. So she really is in a catch-22 situation, and she's trying to pay her own insurance premiums. And so I'm wondering if Insure Oklahoma is the answer for her.
It could be. I can't tell you. We can sure talk specifics later, rather than get in the weeds on that. I will tell you that where we were moving with this program, part-time workers could benefit from where we're going. That is, currently part-time workers don't receive employee benefits, right? You don't work 24 hours or more a week, or 40, 30, whatever your employer says. It can be all over the board, but they don't contribute. In this scenario with aggregating premiums, they could do that. You can have a part-time worker who maybe they say, even if it's just $40, we'll contribute $40 a month towards, and that could then be combined with the spouse's cover. That's something that isn't taking place today.
I guess what I'm trying to...
We got to stop here. We got to stop here on this.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I apologize for this. I already had Jonathan Small set up for this date. And little did I know, a week ago Thursday, when I was down at Senator Stanislawski's office, that they would pull this bill and wait until after the Supreme Court decision. So I was trying to work them in the very first program I could to take a little bit of time so that we could get their perspective. So I've got to stop here and move to our main speaker right now. So I want to tell you how much I appreciate both of you coming by here. Thank you. Also, I saw Representative Lewis Moore. That I don't know if he's. Would you please stand and please welcome Lewis Moore? Well, anyway, very, very happy to have Jonathan Small come today. As you know, if you read my emails and many other things, I'm pretty much opposed to state government increasing the amount of debt that it has. I believe that the spirit of our founding fathers, I'm talking on the state level right now, I believe that the spirit of our founding fathers is that Oklahoma would never incur any debt at all. A balanced budget meant to them that you won't spend any more than what you take in. But over the years, through some very poor Supreme Court decisions in my estimation, and some other slick, clever ways, we figured out how to get around that. And I think the state of Oklahoma probably, if you include the Turnpike Authority, probably is in debt maybe $3-4 billion, something to that nature. I don't know what it is. I will say this, Elise Hall, State Representative Elise Hall, has a bill moving through that would create a website that would detail all of Oklahoma's state debt. You could go to it and see all of it. I think it's a wonderful additional piece of transparency and openness of government. But I've asked Jonathan. Jonathan is a CPA, and he works for the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. It's kind of their number cruncher, their budget man, budget massager, and go-to man, and everything else. What is your official title?
Chief nerd.
Chief nerd. I've asked him to come today, and specifically, we've seen a lot of pressure to encourage some additional bond indebtedness to repair the Capitol. We've seen a lot of pressure to incur bonded indebtedness to build a new chief medical examiner's office in Edmond. Not opposed to doing that. Not opposed to doing either one of them. I just think they should be paid for by money on hand and not borrowing more money. And so I've asked Jonathan to come today and talk a little bit about some of the surpluses that exist today that might can be used for that. And also he'll probably want to talk about OCPA's proposed method for eliminating our state income tax over a period of time and why that would be beneficial to the state of Oklahoma. And I'll tell you this, I got an email from your boss last night, Michael Carnuccio, and evidently the email that I sent out talking about maybe the wrong priority, we should have eliminated corporate tax first, generated some calls into the office and created some problem. And I wasn't even trying. It wasn't an effort. I wasn't asking you. It wasn't an action item. I wasn't asking anybody to call. And I'm not opposed to eliminating the personal income tax. My question was, did we make a mistake and get it out of order? I don't know if Jonathan wants to address that or not. But please welcome Jonathan Small. Jonathan.
First of all, thanks a lot, Charlie, for making me be the one that has to make two elected officials stop talking. So my boss will really be proud. I'm going to try to go real fast. As Charlie said, you've heard a lot of weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth about the crumbling infrastructure. And we recently wrote a story in January about the fact that things actually are not as bad as what you might hear. First of all, state spending is at an all-time high. It's never declined over the last 10 years. So even with 2 recessions, despite what you hear, total state spending has grown every year. And we've got a chart that we've showed. It's grown bipartisanly, so it's not just a problem of one party or what have you.
I thought you said things weren't all that bad.
From the perspective of someone that thinks they need to spend more of your own money. But I've got a solution for them later. We'll get to that. So anyway, one of the things that we did is we went back and we looked at what's happened to some of your dollars. And everyone forgets, as you guys were all working really hard in the last decade, Oklahoma had 2 what are called spillover years, where the amount of money that can be deposited into the rainy day fund gets capped, and so it spills over. The title of our story was, What Happened to the $597 million? What's interesting is that over a 2-year period, with bipartisan control of both the House, Senate, and the governor's office, that money was spent on some things that would surprise you. You know, the Capitol, we can all talk about how much it needs. What's interesting is that there were not improved the Capitol with that extra $597 million. Instead, a fence was added to a spaceport, because we all know it's a core function of Oklahoma government to help you participate in space travel, right? Also, millions of dollars was sent to higher education for new buildings, at the same time that they were making record tuition increases and also experiencing record increases in appropriation levels. There were a number of other things that will shock you. One of the biggest challenges, though, is that that money was used for some things that some people might think are good. I mean, you know, this isn't a discussion about core functions, but okay, so if you are going to pay teachers' salaries, do you think you should pay teachers' salaries from one-time money that you don't expect to get for the next 4 years? No. If you go talk to your financial planner, they'll tell you, don't use a gigantic inheritance to build a house for the house payment you can't afford.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what happened. And the reason why this is important is that Oklahoma is going to get to that position again. This year, there's going to be roughly another $200 to $300 million put into the rainy day fund. And then next year, if growth continues as it has, and it's likely that it will, that will be capped again. And it's going to be our responsibility to make sure that this time next year, when everybody has dollar signs in their eyes and they realize that hundreds of millions of dollars are going to spill over, that those are meant to repair things like buildings and other things like that. I think in fitting with that, at several of your tables, and I'll send more and leave the rest there. There's a green sheet here, and the reason I gave this to you, green because it, you know, money green, kind of thought that went well together. But you hear that there's no places to cut, nowhere to cut. We're dry. There's not a penny of money. This list is a list of over $2 billion over just the next 3 fiscal years of waste, inefficiencies, and non-core services. So we didn't even touch the bureaucracies in education and other services. The only education area that we looked at was higher ed. It's a tough budget year, right? So that's why we spent money on the Tulsa State Fair, the National Finals Steer Rodeo Roping Contest. For some reason, the National Finals Rodeo needed 2 separate appropriations from 2 different agencies. We continue to fund losses on golf courses, the Red Earth Festival, Summer Arts Institute, the Jinx Aquarium, subsidizing folks that won't pay the full cost of their driver's license. We continue to think that apparently it's a core function of government to subsidize people's attendance at state resorts and state parks. When you add all of those things together, that's $469 million for this next coming fiscal year. And if you add getting rid of things that we shouldn't be doing, you know, like the state shouldn't operate an insurance business. We don't really need the state to operate utilities. You guys may disagree with me. If you, at a conservative, Grand River Dam Authority, I'm sorry.
Maybe sell that off.
If you could sell it off, or, you know, we've heard of rural co-ops before. You can mutualize a utility company just like you can a insurance company. That's $805 million next year, and then another $479 million after that. So you can see from that list that me, little nerdy Jonathan, by himself, we don't have any other staff. Me and Brandon and 2 other people came up with this. The House has staff of 8 or 9 people that work on their budget. The Senate, the same. The governor's office has budget staff at OSF. Just think of what they could find with 20 people that we couldn't find with the 3 of us. So I would encourage you to think about that the next time you think somebody thinks you should pitch in more. It is not your fault the Capitol wasn't prepared. It's lawmakers' fault that they spent spillover funds on things like clocks and benches to celebrate the state's birthday. Hey, how about repairing the state capitol for the state's birthday in 2007 instead of buying a clock? I mean, those are the kinds of things that should be happening. And let me say, the lawmakers that are in the room, none of them were in the legislature when that happened, so they are guilt-free. And I would imagine that some of them would have voted against the clocks and other things like that. And if I can, I want to move quickly and then so you have a chance to ask questions. I'm just going to talk 5 minutes because you don't have to convince you all about the income tax. Here's why personal income tax over corporate income tax. Because I'm a nerd and I'm a CPA, many businesses, they might say, Jonathan Small Inc., but they're not actually a filing shareholder corporation. They're actually like an S-corp, or they're a limited liability company. So there's far more business owners that are paying personal income tax as opposed to paying a corporate income tax after all of their dividends or what have you. And that's why OCPA looked at the personal income tax. To give you an idea, the corporate income tax is roughly $336 million, according to the state's comprehensive annual financial report. The plan that OCPA talks about, and the plan that's working its way through the legislature that Representatives Moore and Mulready are co-sponsors on, it gives you $700 million of tax relief in the first year. So the reason that you look at the personal income tax, because it has a far bigger effect or impact on the productivity of all individuals. Another thing to think about with the corporate income tax is companies don't pay the corporate income tax. Guess who pays the corporate income tax?
We do.
You do, because nerds like me, CPAs, have these formulas that are called after-tax, where we take a rate, we stick it in the numerator, and we figure out what we're going to pay, plus the product that we want to pay for, plus we want to charge, what we want to make, and we add all of that together. And when you buy an apple, the cost of that apple includes what potential corporate income tax you might have to pay. Well, it's different for you when you go work on a job or you run your own auto shop and you're a limited liability company. Your income gets charged personal income tax. It's very difficult for you to try to reprorate that somehow to your customer. And I think that one of the things that's most important to think about here, even with that plan, you've heard what I've talked about here. You hear, again, more weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth that we can't do this year. All we're talking about doing is government cutting 6 to 7% of appropriations, so people can have more of their own income. I don't think that's that tough of an idea. I don't think that should be that hard or that difficult. So I appreciate your time. I'd be more than happy to take any questions. I want to end with, why this is important to me. I don't know if you can see this picture, but these are my daughters, Jasmine, Savannah, and Hayden. I was homeschooled, but I'm now seeing what my parents had to go through. They had to write their property tax check to a public school that refused to teach them the way they were taught, that told them that they needed to learn about global warming and every other nonsense. Taught them how to have sex in the third grade, but yet they dictate to them whether or not they can have an income tax. This is what I'm about. This is what we're talking about. If you want to create a place where your kids can stay and grow and have the opportunity to succeed, eliminate the income tax. If you want to put a shot in the arm, a vaccination against Obamacare, repeal the income tax and create economic growth. If you want to stop the ever-growing higher education, repeal the income tax. That way you get to keep more of your dollars and decide where your kids are going to go. I know it sounds trite or easy to say for what we're talking about, but eliminating the income tax, it starts getting rid of a whole lot of problems that we have to face and address with government. So with that, I'll take any questions and go ahead.
I won't go first here, particularly in light of the email that I wrote this week. I want everybody to understand, I am not opposed to eliminating the personal income tax. But as you mentioned here, the corporate income tax collected by the state of Oklahoma is really about half the revenue that you're proposing in this first year. So why not totally eliminate that and also eliminate some of the personal income tax? And the reason I think it's important, as you pointed out here, Jonathan, corporations don't pay that tax. They collect it. But yet, they collect it through higher prices that they charge for their goods or services. By eliminating that, that reduces their cost and makes what they make or do in the state of Oklahoma more competitive, which is good for their business. And so my point is, why not do both? And let's work on both of them at the same time.
Well, I think if you read the study, you know, if you want to, this is also on your table. This is a short form of what happens, but something that the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs is not, you know, we're not going out trying to find more money for government. But actually, if you eliminate the income tax, you're going to grow the economy. So we think that in the next 5 or 6 years, we'll be able to turn around and say, hey, we're going to completely eliminate the corporate income tax. But here's why we take the approach with the personal income tax. When I'm a CEO, I don't care what the corporate income tax is, because you guys that are buying my product are going to pay it. I do care about what the personal income tax is, because if I'm making $14 million a year, 5% on $14 million is the difference between buying my house and not. So the reason we're looking at the personal income tax is I want to get the company here first, so then we can work on lowering the corporate income tax. And that's the thing that when we talk with, it doesn't matter who's been in office, even Brad Henry talked about tax cuts. When he cut them, he participated in cutting them 20%. Decision makers, they're looking at the personal income tax, because we all know incentives matter, and what's the most personal to you is what's going to drive your decision making. And I know it's, on a math perspective, it's easy, but the problem is when people see the personal income tax, decision makers, they decide to go or not to go somewhere. Yes?
I have a question. There's an analysis of a bill going around. I can't remember if it's House Bill 3061 or 353. That's saying that the gradual elimination or drop down of the state income tax also is striking exemptions. So can you address that?
Right. Let's and this is where you need to stick with me. And you guys love hardcore honest truth. And here's the hardcore honest truth. A personal income tax that picks winners and losers with exemptions and deductions is progressive. That's not what we believe in. If you're going to have an income tax, everyone should pay the same lowest rate possible until you get rid of it. So what we looked at from a policy perspective is what's the best for Oklahoma, what's the best tax structure, and how do you resituate it. You can bring to me an example of, probably hundreds of people that under the proposals that are going out there, that it's going to be worse for them, next year. That's because they were being picked as a winner over the loser that doesn't get a special exemption or tax credit. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move to the best, most robust economic reform. I'm sorry that there are wind energy credits that rich people that may not be able to take part of anymore on their personal income tax. That's because the tax code is for raising revenue, not generating votes for the particular constituencies you like or who you think is going to go to the voting booth for you.
Someone else? Scott?
This is in connection to the income tax, of course. I'm all for that. As a matter of fact, 10 years, I think it's 9 years too long.
Right.
But an insidious thing that also plays property tax. You were mentioning you were a homeschooler. You were paying for facilities that you don't use. Property tax is, I think, 90% or more for the public schools. I call them the anti-public schools because they're not the best.
Yeah, mine's in the 66% range or whatever.
You think it's that low?
Yeah, but it's like 2,900 and 1,700 goes to Deer Creek schools.
Okay. Well, I've been trying to get the ear of legislators on this for several years now. Those who don't use the government schools should not be paying for them. That's never been fair, and it's screaming to be taken care of here now. The property taxes for those who don't use the government schools need to be eliminated. That's going to be the first step in privatizing schools in Oklahoma. You privatize schools in Oklahoma because those left holding the bag, when those who use the schools are the only ones paying for them, they're going to have a revolt. There has to be-
Formulate that into a question, Scott.
I'm sorry?
Make that a question, please, not a speech.
How soon do you think we can implement eliminating the property tax as part of the deals with public schools so that we can privatize education in Oklahoma and see excellence in it?
Well, being homeschooled and now having homeschooled, and the property tax. First of all, let's remember, the state of Oklahoma doesn't get a penny from property tax. So again, I'm going to try to speak some things that we don't like to hear. Your property taxes that you don't like at your local level are your local officials' faults. And if there is a property tax reduction that you'd like to see at the local level, then you need to be supporting those officials that will look to move that at that level. And the reason that we didn't look at the property tax was, quite frankly, that reason. Much of the property tax much of the authority is given by the Constitution to your local authorities.
Richard. Yeah, I appreciate that you mentioned earlier that, frankly, our legislature should have had the foresight to look at the repairs on the state capitol building before it started falling apart. I'm currently running for state party office, and I think along the lines of foresight, in 6 years, the Republican Party is going to need a candidate for auditor and inspector. Could you look to the right and make a suggestion? There's a mirror.
I don't know how to answer
He's speechless.
Yes.
I just wanted you to note that you had missed an opportunity to get rid of another state agency, which is there's a little private gun collection that is taken care of by state expense in Denmark, and I think that's close to maybe $4 million. And it could be wonderfully acclimated with the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
They are on our list to not be to no longer receive taxpayer.
But that's one of those. Again, why are we subsidizing and taking care of a private gun?
I think your lawmaker would appreciate a call telling you felt in such way. Yes.
Jonathan, in your number crunching on the budget and your knowledge of the history of the state budget, have you ever seen can you think of a specific government program that was an enabler in competition in the free market?
No.
Amen, brother. Please keep that in mind. Government programs and government subsidies do not enable competition in the free market.
Now let me say though, because I want to be honest, several of the recommendations that were being made with the bill that was decided not to be heard, OCPA actually supported several of those ideas. I want to hit people with another hard truth. We don't have a free market in healthcare. I think it's interesting to me that everybody is up in arms about Obamacare and the personal mandate, but I don't see anybody marching down to the Capitol to repeal the requirement that a doctor has to see you in an emergency room. And the same people that are on Medicare and Medicaid, that kind of government intervention is okay. But but I'm just saying we're not seeing, in their eyes, we're not seeing a mass drone on the Capitol to reform Medicare. And in particular, because we're all honest and Fritz here, there's a lot of hardcore conservatives who are up in arms about the fact that they're about to lose their targeted government exemption on retirement. A progressive loophole that was put in by the Democrats to help them maintain control in their districts so that, let's exempt the income of government officials. So I think that's where we have to be balanced. Part of the problem is with lawmakers is that you've had Medicaid for 50 years, Medicare for even longer. They have to take and address these issues where they are today. And part of what they were trying to do with that effort, I agree with them, part of what that effort was going to do was, one, it was going to extract insure Oklahoma from the claws and the death grip of the healthcare authority, a welfare agency, which would have been a very good thing. And it was also going to help facilitate a controlled market. Don't fool yourself. The healthcare market is government controlled. Even if Obamacare is repealed tomorrow, you still have a heavily government controlled healthcare system. Yes, it's not full blown.
Well, then let's work towards deregulating what we have. I think we would all agree, we don't have a free market system. We have a regulated market out there, by and large in America anymore. We just need to move back towards the free market principles.
But the problem is to repeal that requirement for doctors, your state lawmakers can't do that. And until that gets done, they have to do other things to try to operate in that. And that's what they were trying to do.
You know, one of the things, and I got into quite a disagreement with one of my fellow board members on the Logan Medical Center a few years ago, when he was bragging about the fact that he wasn't going to take any government dollars. He had insurance, and therefore he could control his own health care. And I suggested to him, I don't care whether the insurance company's paying your bill or if it's some type of a government program. As long as there's a third-party payer in there, they are not a disinterested third party. You are not going to make decisions unless you pull money out of your pocket and pay for your health care. You and you only. You are not going to be able to totally control what you do. It's not between you and your doctor. As long as there's a third party involved, they are not disinterested. They're going to be very involved in your health care when there's a third party involved. Someone else? Can't believe this. Okay. Well, listen, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming today. This handout on the table over here for some time. Please access anything from OCPAC and evaluate it for what you believe it is. Also, Mike mentioned to you, if you've not joined OCPAC yet, please do so. Our membership forms are over here on the table. And I'll tell you, everything's been moved up because of filing date, elections and all. We need to collect as much of our revenue as possible, as early as possible, so we know what we have to contribute to other candidates. Next week, we're going to have a gentleman here by the name of Charles Sasser. Charles has probably authored close to 50 books. He's a former Green Beret, and one of the things that he did when the Occupy Wall Street movement first began, he also has a law enforcement background. He actually went undercover and spent about 4 or 5 days among the Occupy Wall Street movement in New York to find out what their real agenda is. And he's going to be coming and talking about that. We also will show a short brand new DVD next week regarding support your local police and why it's so important to keep them independent from being federalized and controlled by the federal government. So next week will be a fascinating program. Don't miss it. Thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you next week.